Okay, welcome to Surrey PCC Live with Surrey's Police and Crime Commissioner, Kevin Hurley. Hello, Kevin. How are you?
Very well. Good to talk to you, Paul. Thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. I'm well. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen you, actually. You've obviously been very busy.
Indeed. I think the last time we met was, probably at a mosque, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah, that's right. That's right. It was. Actually, that was a cracking event. And I just missed you, actually, for the big thing they just had.
Yeah,
in Alton.
Chelsea, yeah.
Chelsea, I just missed you. You went the day before me. But anyway, what we're going to do, just for those people who are joining us watching live and who are going to watch the recording afterwards. So this is, we try to do these about every 3 months, and we give the community of Surrey and wider the opportunity to really ask Kevin whatever they want. But before we go into that, because I've got a long list of questions here that residents have sent in via Twitter, Facebook, email, text message. I've got about 18, I think. We're going to just let Kevin really have a couple of minutes just to update residents on what he's been up to since the last time we spoke, and maybe even talk about some of his priorities and that type of thing. So go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, quick reminder for the public. I'm an elected politician. I'm an independent, and I cover the 11 parliamentary constituencies of Surrey. It's my job to ascertain from the public what's important to them. We call them their priorities, and ask the Chief Constable to deliver those in line with all the other operational requirements that she's got, in the Chief Constable to deliver. My other role is making sure I set the right budget precept to pay for police and work with the borough and district councils to make the place safer, along with Crown Prosecution Service, prisons, and loads of voluntary agencies like Neighbourhood Watch. So what's been going on? Well, some key stuff that's gone on, and this is the big thing, is in the last couple of years, we've seen a 40% reduction in burglaries of household dwellings in Surrey. So there's even though this is a very safe county, in fact, our houses are much safer than they've ever been before, because burglaries hasn't been so low since we kept records, to my knowledge. Other good stuff that's been going on is we are now rolling out across the county, in many of the boroughs, a joint enforcement team project. This means that council officers are operating in fluorescent yellow uniforms, body-worn cameras, out there dealing with antisocial behaviour, working very closely with the police. So this is being very effective against unlicensed taxi cabs, littering, fly tipping, uncontrolled dogs, rowdy behaviour. Reigate and Banstead, good news for them, and well done to them, frankly. I've just signed off a 5-year investment plan to keep that going. Spelthorne Borough are still doing the same. Elmbridge Borough are keen to replicate that, and indeed Runnymede Borough are as well. And I've just been in discussions with the Chief Exec and leader of Epsom Council, also looking to see how they can move that forward. Over in Woking, they're taking similar steps, bringing in enhanced enforcement against antisocial behaviour, people who park their cars in disabled bays, the double yellow lines, the things that really, frankly, annoy me. I don't know about anyone else, but I just don't like inconsiderate or selfish behaviour, and I'm pleased to see all the councils are now joining in with enhanced enforcement against those people who blight all our lives.
Right, wonderful. And what sort of things politically have you? Because I've noticed I've seen your press releases come through. What sort of political things have you been engaged with?
I think some of the key things I've been saying is that I don't think we are investing enough money in all elements of the criminal justice sector. I mean by that, prisons, the Crown Prosecution Service who prosecute cases, the court service, rehabilitation of offenders, probation and so on, diverting young people from crimes. There's not enough money going to the councils to do that, or indeed the police, because it's my view that all those agencies working together, they underpin our economy and enable businesses to prosper, to pay taxes to government, to pay for health and education. It's my own view that, yes, we must have austerity because the country needs to balance its books. We don't end up like Greece and so on. But I'd like the government to do a slight adjustment of the tiller about which areas of public sectors they are ring fencing, and those that they're really cutting, because it's really starting to hit hard on what we're trying to do to deliver on community safety. But I'm regularly in touch with government. I'm pleased to see that, working with our 11 members of parliament, government are now looking into the police funding formula to see if there is the correct distribution of money coming to this county. Because, of course, you know, we pay more for policing out of our council tax in Surrey than anywhere else in the country. 54% comes off the council taxpayer and only 46% from government. If we were living in Northumbria, government pays 85% of the cost of policing. So I want a fairer deal for us, the residents, so that government gives us a bit more money. We get no extra money, you see, for having to put the police on to policing the M25, the most important bit of road in the country between Gatwick and Heathrow, up as far as, in fact, the M4. We all know how often we're all stuck on it. Well, we have to put a lot of extra cops on trying to keep that important road going for the country's economy. Yet there's no additional money given to us for what is really a national role. And of course, you know, there are other things we're picking up with the borders now being so insecure. The first time a lorry driver stops for a coffee or fill up with diesel is generally at Clackett Lane services, or indeed Cobham services. And quite regularly, large numbers of migrants or refugees are jumping out into our county. And of course, we've then got to go and find them, detain them for the Borders Agency, which is continually abstracting us, not me, but our officers, from their daytime duty, which is protecting us from criminals and antisocial behaviour. So because the borders are not well funded and not properly resourced, Surrey Police are having to do that work to the detriment of our population. But this is all stuff that I'm engaging with our MPs with, so that's working well. Good stuff, I might add, because I don't want to be seen as being negative. I've got to be clear. Our MPs have played a key role in what we hope is going to be an improvement in our funding situation. So, you know, I'd like to really thank our MPs, whether it's Dominic Rabb at Elmbridge or Mr. Dove over at Woking and so on, or up Quartung up at Mr. Quartung up at Spelthorne, for what they've done to push this up the government agenda, because they've all been supportive, and I think we could do better now as a result of the work of our MPs.
Right. Now, you mentioned the MPs. My MP is Michael Gove, who is the new Justice Secretary, Minister for Justice. Have you engaged with Michael since he's taken on his new role? And if not, will you be doing that? Because obviously that's a key cabinet position.
Well, I've written to Michael on a number of occasions in terms of wanting to meet or discuss issues in relation to public safety in the county, but not had a response.
Right. I'll next time I see Michael, which is actually not long from now, I'll be asking him why. But then again, he may have responded to you. At the end of the day, like you, he is a busy fella.
Very busy. He's very busy. So I don't want to make any imputations or draw anything.
Sure. And of course, he's only just in post, so we've got to give him time to embed, I suppose.
Many of the MPs in the county regularly are involved in discussing matters of concern to their constituents, and I understand cabinet ministers are very busy.
Right, fair enough. Now,
in fairness to Michael, I regularly meet with Dominic Rabb, who's in fact one of his justice ministers. So, in terms of that, there is a good link into the justice ministry anyway, because by pure chance, Dominic Rabb is my local MP in Elmbridge.
Right. Interesting that Stan Bush, who's just left a comment there. I think Stan's in America, if I remember right, who's been watching this live, and he says that it's interesting that the same sort of issues and questions are global. It's not just these issues are not just relevant to the United Kingdom or even Surrey. These are worldwide problems.
They are. They're absolutely. And of course, as part of what might be called the developed or the first world, the United States has got very similar problems in all its shapes and forms. We've got the legacy of the old industrial age, where people were once used to working in car factories, steel refineries, mills, and steel mills and so on. And of course, that work's no longer there. People are having to if you like, redefine where they're going to work. At the same time, we are very popular countries for people to come and live because we are so just, such good social systems, and understandably people want to come here, and I welcome them because frankly we still are a growing economy, and we need to have skilled, adequate people coming here. But the dilemmas are the same. In amongst that, criminals and bad people try and make their way. So whether you're in Canada, America, France or Britain, you've got those same kind of problems.
Right. Okay. Now, what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, Kevin, because we've got a lot of questions, and I've just noticed we've been joined by one of the people who was sent in one of the questions. So what I'll do is, because I know he's a busy fella and he might not be able to stay for the whole broadcast, I'll read out his question first. That's David Allen. He's the councillor for Frimley, and he's also the chairman at Surrey Heath Borough Council of the Policy and Audit Scrutiny Committee. So I'll read out his question first, and if we've got time, if there's anything at the end that you want to add, that's not a problem at all, Kevin. So David Allen asked, what is your view on the gap between what you thought you needed budget-wise and what you settled for in April?
What's my view on the gap? We are the best funded police force in the country in terms of what we, the council taxpayers, already pay, but we are dealing with a number of challenges. The first one is, of course, we are looking at probably finding £25 million worth of savings out of the police budget over the coming years. What that means, because most of the cost of policing is in actual paying for staff, we're going to lose probably about 400 or 500 staff. There's no ifs or buts. We won't be able to pay their wages. So that's one problem. I think the other gaps is it's not so much in our budget, but in the capability of people that we work with to keep the public safe. So borough, district and county councils all got roles to play in community safety, and that varies from putting in place appropriate systems, whether it's CCTV in a particular shopping centre, to having diversionary schemes if you're the county council to divert you from going down the route of offending, or alternatively, potentially roles in rehabilitation and so on. As their budgets drop, there isn't the money available for that kind of staff. So police are having to try and fill the gap. Equally, with the cutbacks in health and mental health, not so much cutbacks, but restrictions, there are more and more mentally disordered people out on our streets who quite often come to notice the police because they're doing something strange, something unusual, or even frightening for the public. And again, the police have to pick up that issue. You know, we've got problems where perhaps you've got children or young people who are extremely disruptive, and at one time they would have been able to go to secure accommodation. Now they're looked after by councils in children's homes, keep absconding, going out continually, disrupting other people's lives, being difficult. And because there's not the funding for the secure accommodation, police are continually having to deal with the gap that's created, that local authorities don't have the secure accommodation. So it's a really complex issue. And the other issue is we didn't have stuff like cybercrime, online fraud. We didn't have children being exploited online. We didn't have women being groomed online. You know, all of that stuff is new. We didn't have the kind of frauds with the monetary systems we once had. And we didn't have this wholesale, homegrown internal terrorism to deal with. All of these things place a tremendous burden on police to resource that, and indeed council partners. And of course, with the budgets being cut, it really is a squeeze. Now, to really cut to the question, knowing what I know as a Surrey resident and knowing what's required, if we can't amalgamate our police forces to drive out the savings that would be created by just having regional forces, not having loads of chief constables, PCCs like me and so on, then I reckon the budget gap that I really have got with Surrey Police to maintain the current levels of service and deal with child exploitation properly deal with child protection, domestic violence, cybercrime, fraud, protect old people properly. I think we probably need at least another 25 to 30 million a year on our budget of 200 at the moment, which is due to drop off. So we'll see what happens. I am hopeful that some of that gap is going to be filled by the government's retrenchment now of the funding formula. As I say, I thank our local MPs for the part they've played in that. And I'm off to see the policing minister in the next couple of weeks. Also, because we're doing stuff collaborating with the fire brigade, the county council and so on, there's a bit more savings. And by just steady small increases on council tax, I think Surrey's still going to be in a pretty good place, public safety and policing wise, relative to anywhere else in the country. In fact, I'm content that 4 or 5 years down the line from now, policing and public safety in Surrey is going to be the best in the country, partly because of the way our funding arrangements are now laid out, but also because of schemes we've got in place. We've really planned ahead. So, for example, whenever we get some money created as a lump of cash, perhaps because we are cutting down on employees, but we'd already planned for a bit to pay their wage bill. If we reduced slightly earlier, that money, we use that to pay off our public sector borrowing requirement, for want of a better word, which is the pension burden. That means henceforth we never have to pay interest payments on the pension. So we're being very prudent with money here, and not only are we collaborating with people, we're pruning right back, but trying to get the maximum out of it. Any spare monies we've got, we're paying off long-term debt held by the force, which means we don't have interest rates to deal with. So we're effectively paying off our mortgage early. I'm confident that when I'm even older than I am, and I'm not in this job, things will be a lot better.
Okay, let's get on to the next question. But thanks for that. And Dave Allen has just said in the comments there, thanks for the answer, very well put. So let's move on to the next question now. This question is from an ex-PCSO. This lady, Barbara Ball, served with Surrey Police actually for 25 years, but was a PCSO on the front line for 11 and a half years. And I'll just read out her comment and her question. I gave 11 and a half years to Surrey neighbourhoods and have watched the PCC destroy the hard work PCSOs did. And now communities don't have many PCSOs to build relationships in the community anymore. 25 years working for the police, and I watched it as an outsider now all fall apart. I have seen residents since I left a year and a half ago, and they say it's very sad, and we don't have PCSOs doing the job they were taken on to do. So our question is, why are you destroying neighbourhood policing? And they're saying exactly the same question came anonymously from a serving Surrey police officer right now. So if you could, I know that's quite a straight question. I know you're a straight talking guy, Kevin. So if you could answer that, please.
Yeah, so I'm a straight talking person and say straight away, don't blame me. Don't blame me. I'm not destroying it. I'm the politician. I'm trying to do the best I can with reduced funding. What I do is I give the best budget I can to the Chief Constable and ask the Chief Constable to deliver operationally on policing in the county. I can only work with what I can raise in terms of taxation from the public locally and what the government give me. So don't blame me. I understand you're upset at what's going on. It's not my fault. I'm doing the best I can. And frankly, the chief officer team in this force are juggling with difficult situations, and I am content for the most part in the way they spend the money, that they're doing their best. I value the contribution of neighbourhood police officers, and I value the contribution of police and community support officers. But the fact of the matter is, because we cannot afford to pay for the numbers of staff we once had, operational decisions have been made to change the deployments of some PCSOs or neighbourhood officers from their roles. It is very important we protect and safeguard children at risk. It is very important we investigate rapes. It's very important we deal with counter-terrorist threats, and it's very important we stop old ladies being robbed of their life savings. There is a balance in what policing does. And yes, relationships with PCSOs, talking with local communities, are important. So is people turning up quickly to 999 calls with adequate numbers. So is having skilled detectives stopping people dealing drugs to children. It's all part of the balance. It is unfortunate there have been small numbers of reductions in PCSOs, but I hasten to say at the current time, there's been almost no change in the number of people deployed in neighbourhoods. That will change because there isn't enough money. My answer is, don't blame me. I can only do so much with the money made available. But thank you for your service.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know Barbara very well. Wonderful woman, very popular amongst elderly residents in Surrey Heath. But yeah, you know, you can understand the frustration, can't you?
I mean, you know, if I could say to Barbara, thank you very much for what you've done. I value what you did. I was a police officer for 30 years. 9 of my family are in. My son's a serving officer. My nephews are. I know exactly what the challenges are that people who work for the service are, and I value it. But we haven't got the money, and you can't blame me. I'm trying to do my best. That's why I run for it. But it's also why I will not take it when people just say it's my fault, I'm destroying it. I frankly find that hurtful. But
no, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. And the thing as well is that what a lot of people don't realise is that you don't actually control how much money you get. And if you want more money, I forget, is it over 2%? You've got to call a referendum.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah. So what I've done, you know, let's put this way there. I canvassed the Surrey public last year if they wanted to pay more for their police to keep Barbara in a job, and the Surrey public said no. So, you know, if we are looking at where it goes from, we're in a democracy. People chose not to pay more than 2%. So we have to make tough decisions. At the other end, for the last 2.5 years, no matter how damaging it is to me as a politician, I've constantly gone out to the media and to our MPs saying, give us more money.
Right.
I need more money for us to keep people like Barbara with the relationships, but I will not take the criticism because it's not down to me.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, thanks for your honest answer there, Kevin. Question from Roger Neal. You probably recognise that name. Roger was he was until very recently, where he retired from the force, the Borough Commander for Runnymede, which has been in the news actually yesterday. I might ask you to comment on that. What was it like creating the Surrey PCC's role after your election?
Well, it's still an emerging role. People still don't know quite what we do. And I think up and down the country, some of us don't. But for me, there was no problem for me creating it because it was quite clear to me. My job was to listen to the public. What were their priorities? Give them to the Chief Constable. At the same time, work out what the budgetary needs were for the Chief Constable. And on behalf of the public, make sure the Chief was spending the money properly and oversee that, along with realising with decreasing budgets and everyone struggling in terms of councils and so on, how could I get the councils to work as even more closely than they already are doing with the police? How could I get better partnership with the Crown Prosecution Service to meet the needs of victims? So for me, creating the role hasn't been a challenge because it's always been clear to me I'm a partnership builder and I'm about bringing people along the way with me to do what we all want, which is make the place safer. There have been issues with some people about they either don't like the fact there's this new kid on the block, whether they are other politicians or council or police officers or members of the public. But government put this person in place, I think, to be a negotiator, a persuader, an unblocker, a troubleshooter, to try and do the best we can with the difficulties of the budget, and I try and negotiate my way through the middle of that.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thanks for that answer. Now, the next question is from Councillor Paul Spooner. Paul is the planning portfolio holder and deputy group leader at Guildford Borough Council, and he's got a couple of questions. So I'll ask the first one. If you could answer it as quickly as possible, Kevin. Are you standing for re-election?
Yes.
You are? Good. Why have you stopped your borough briefings in Guildford?
We haven't stopped them. We've got an ongoing programme of borough briefings where we go around and do all our crime summits. There is, I'm just going to check, we have got one scheduled for Guildford.
No, December 2nd.
December 2nd, we've got one scheduled for Guildford on December 2nd. But on top of those crime summits, I or my deputy Jeff regularly go out all over the county, including Guildford, meeting with groups of people. So quite recently, I was over at the sports ground talking to a group about 90 odd people on matters relating to policing. And in fact, actually, only last week, I addressed a large group of retired business people. I think they're called Probus, the Guildford group, about policing issues. So I'm doing it all the time, but I suppose I'm only one person. I'm covering 11 parliamentary constituencies, and the work of the area is covered by about 400 or 500 borough, district, county or parish councillors. I can't be everywhere, so that's why I try and be as visible as I can in the media. I do a lot on Twitter and Facebook.
You are very active on social media, which is great. And actually, these things we're doing now, it's engagement.
Yes. Sorry, Paul, I missed that little bit. Could you say that again, or was it just?
No. Yeah, sometimes there are little breaks. I'm saying that you're very active on social media, and that it's wonderful, isn't it, that we have these technologies where we can, increase your engagement and visibility.
Yeah, in fact, Paul, this afternoon, you should see me from 4 o'clock onwards on national TV, hopefully all the channels. I'll be talking live to camera either on College Green outside Parliament or in the various studios at Millbank Tower, hopefully appearing on the national news at 6 o'clock, giving a briefing about the problems of these upcoming elections, in that independents may not, as last time round, be given a leaflet to enable the public to know what we're about. So that was one of the problems last time round, the lack of publicity. And depending on the outcome of the meeting today, I'll be on the national media talking about that. So I'm out there as much.
What channel are you going to be on, Kevin?
All of them.
All right, so it's right the way across, is it? I'll keep the eye out for that.
BBC, Sky, Radio 4, BBC South, all of them. Depending on how it goes and picks up and what's going on, there's scheduled stuff. Myself and the PCC for Dorset are about to go on there about the need to make sure there's far greater knowledge about what PCCs are about. And
absolutely.
Because otherwise, we are, I understand one of the ladies earlier criticised, we're the whipping person, and they don't really know what our role is because there's a lack of explanation.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
to give you an example, we're all constantly told we're more expensive than the police authorities, which, by the way, only did about 10% of this role. In actual fact, my office, in terms of employees, is cheaper than the police authorities. People don't understand because I now give out a good couple of million quid's worth of money to grants to divert people from crime, public safety work. People don't realise that that's what we now also do, allocate lumps of money, but we're in fact cheaper than the old governance system for policing.
Right, okay. Good question. Another quick question from Paul Spoon. If you can answer it as quickly as possible, because I want to make sure that we get everybody's questions in. And there are some questions in the comments, which I'll bolt onto the end if there's time. So if you're watching this live, I will try and get to your comments. Thank you very much for leaving them. So the last question from Paul Spooner is, what value do you feel you have provided to the Guildford community? Good question.
I'm assuming that's me personally. As
part the PCC.
All right. I think I've partly answered that. What I'm doing is making sure that the priorities the public give me are fed into the policing plan for the Chief Constable to deliver on. So when they tell me antisocial behaviour is important, I make sure that gets elevated up the policing agenda. At the same time, I'm working with borough and district councils, including Guildford, on issues relating to those aspects. One of the examples of things I'm involved in with staff from Guildford Cathedral is we are currently looking at schemes to how we can better rehabilitate former service people who've gone through the criminal justice system. So there's a whole host of stuff. How do I go about it? Last month, I was out on patrol with the Guildford Neighbourhood officer, out on the streets, attending incidents, seeing the problems and issues there. So the whole host of stuff. And I did mention earlier, I've given 2 separate briefings to local Guildford people It's many and varied. You know, I'm lobbying and working with mental health providers to make sure that when mentally disordered people in Guildford come into police custody, that they are looked after immediately. So Guildford Police do get out there back patrolling, and of course I try and do my best to make sure the police generally have the right budget so they can fund patrolling in Guildford.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for that.
But it's a county-wide job, Paul. My job is the county, so I do it in conjunction with local needs, but what the county needs are.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you. Now, we've had a question, 2 questions actually via Twitter from Dombat, or at Dombat. The first question is, Surrey County Council seems to be generally against 20 miles per hour zones. What are your views on that?
The biggest cause of death in this county, and has been for years, is the way people drive their cars. The speed at which a car hits someone on the road, whether they're walking, cycling, on a motorbike or another car, governs the outcome in terms of death, serious injury. Speed kills. We all know speed kills. My own view is, in local neighbourhood areas, back streets, small villages and towns, I am keen to see reductions in speed limits where appropriate. I also understand there are issues that it's the council's role to keep the main roads flowing at a reasonable speed, and therefore they set the speeds and systems that they think are appropriate. But I live down a very narrow road in a road where people park both sides of the road. The speed limit is 30. I see children and older people sometimes walking out. I personally will drive down that, but 25 miles an hour maximum, probably even slightly less, because I'm not comfortable with it. And I am a fast pursuit trained police driver in my past. People who know me might say I'm a poor driver, but I know you can only stop in a certain period of time. And I know that speed is what injures. I am supportive in the correct areas and the right areas of reducing speed limits to 20, 25. Some people say, well, you know, police can't enforce them. Speed limits are essentially self-enforced by the people who drive. None of us would drive, or unless we're a madman, will not drive at 60 mile an hour in a 30 mile an hour limit. We will tone our driving down. And people who might drive at 35, 36 and think, I'll chance it. I'm not approving of that, but they'll drive at that. If the speed limit's 20, they'll drive at 25 or 26. That's 10 miles an hour slower when they hit a child or an old person. It's self-governing. I'd like to see in villages and narrow roads a reduction. Okay.
Now, one of the people who is in the comments there, I know this guy. He's Jack from Windlesham, and I've let him into the blab here because he would like to come.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, he would like to come back. He would like to make a comment to what you've just said. So go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, have you spoke to like car manufacturers making cars, say for local people that just drive locally, say we'll make a car that will only go 30 mile an hour top, that's it. And if people that actually do travelling around the country, build cars that only will do 70 mph. We don't need any cars going any more than that because of restrictions on the road anyway. But I just wonder if you had any sort of speaks with car manufacturers.
To use technology then to restrict.
You know, I mean, the chances of me as a police and crime commissioner in Surrey influencing the policy of Porsche or Mercedes or Aston Martin, Jaguar or Ford is minimal. They are all regulated by government regulations that stipulate the deformability required on a bumper, airbags, and so on. You now don't get the Jaguar leaping cat on a bonnet or the Mercedes thing because they're damaging to people. I mean, the issue on it is about car speeds. It is a lump of something hard going along that when it hits an object like a human being, it transmits kinetic energy to that person. I've got an engineering degree, and they then go through the air, and that's governed by the amount of kinetic energy transferred to that person. And regardless of, you know, how well the car's made, if the car's going too quickly and the person picks up that, they're going to fly through the air, hit the head on the ground. You know, the argument's well made about car safety. I do think you make a good point. but I'm not really in a position to influence that. The only ways I can influence that is by local education, speaking with the councils. We do a lot of stuff, for example, we call it Drive Safe, where all the kids who are just coming up to driving age in the county, as far as we can, go for a one-day presentation at some large hall, well-crafted, hard-hitting films and talks from firefighters, paramedics, mothers who've lost children, severely disabled teenagers, police officers, and they talk them through the scenario of just what it means when you're going too quickly, texting on your phone or your music is playing. We do a lot of stuff like that, but there's only so much that I can do from this office, and I have to leave your comments to government, Department of Transport, who do a lot of stuff on talking with car manufacturers. There's no way I'm ever going to be able to, from this position, reduce the speed limits on the M25.
Okay, let's wrap that up. But thanks, Jack. Thanks very much. I'm gonna bounce you out now, but thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so also Paul Spooner, who asked a question earlier, has just joined us. He's in the comments there. Okay. But so let's get on to the next question. It's also from the same fella on Twitter. Are you worried that road deaths are becoming normalised as a result of less is done to reduce them? Keep your answer short, please, Kevin.
Road deaths will never become normalised, and we are doing more and more to reduce them. I just talked about about the educational programs we do. I'm trying to beef up the capability of our community speed watch. My ultimate goal is for them to be able to raise tickets and penalty points on people, because we've got to moderate the ill-considered or unthinking or deliberately antisocial behaviour people, the people who drive too fast. I drive a nice car. I'd like to drive it fast, but I know it's dangerous.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. And thank you, Don Bat, for your questions. So the next question is from a business owner in Bagshot, Sandy Grayson. This week at around 4 p.m. on Monday afternoon, the front plate glass window of my shop in Bagshot was smashed. The police were not interested in attending, even though 2 other shops in the village and several bus shelters have suffered from the same fate in the last 2 weeks. What is the Commissioner's stance on police non-attendance or interest, please?
Well, I can't comment on those circumstances because I don't know enough about them as to what the conversation was, what the decisions were on it. My stance on policing is I believe in a zero-tolerance policing approach to all forms of antisocial behaviour, violent bullies and people who blight our lives. If someone's smashing your window, that's antisocial behaviour. It's affecting your business as well, which therefore, in the long term, affects the tax that you could pay to the government to pay for all the good stuff like health and education and so on. So clearly, I would expect some form of action, but I can't comment on what's happened because I don't know the exact facts. But as far as I'm concerned, we do not ignore wrongdoing, and we collaborate with anyone we can, councils and so on, to make it better.
Okay, thanks for that. Now, the next question is from Stefan. Now, Stefan is the founder of the Windle Valley Youth Project. I think you know Stefan because you gave him a bus recently.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I don't know if you remember that. I think was that through the proceeds of crime.
I can't remember what we did do, but
you gave them some money so they could buy a mini
safety fund. Yeah, community safety fund.
Yeah, and that was your deputy who heads all that up.
And we send out stuff to all kinds of people to making safer.
Well, Stefan has a good question, and it's actually a question that I'm glad he's asked, to be honest with you, because I'd love to hear the answer to this. Drug dealing / supply and the associated behaviours are an issue for communities. Problematic drug use can lead to all sorts of negative outcomes for young people. How can we tackle the supply better? What best practice is there from around the country or even the world that we can learn from?
Well, that's a massive question. Trying to keep it short is difficult, but we start back in the UK, back to first principles. We try and educate young people as to the threats and risks of using different substances. So therefore, there isn't quite the same market for suppliers wanting to make money. But if we go to the other end of the extreme, we have got National Crime Agency officers deployed in places like Afghanistan, Nigeria, Jamaica, South Africa, where our drugs come from, trying to interdict right at the top end large-scale trafficking coming in. We've also then got borders officers trying to stop the stuff coming in the borders, working with Royal Navy fishery protection vessels, which, funny enough, I was talking to the crew of one of those the other day, trying to stop the stuff coming into the country. We've then got National Crime Squad, National Crime Agency officers trying to deal with it at the national level. And beyond that, or below that, locally in the Surrey area, we work with a regional organised crime unit with Thames Valley, Hampshire, Kent and Sussex in trying to take on the criminals at that level. And then within the force, we've got proactive officers who try and take in the lower level drug dealers. And I'm in the middle of trying to set up partnerships right now with headmasters and principals of schools so that we can find a way to deal with people bringing drugs into schools and selling it without necessarily criminalising them, so that we can then go upstream, if you like, and catch the major drug traffickers above them. So I had recent discussions with the Deputy Chief Constable and the area head of the Crown Prosecution Service of how we might do that. So lots of stuff going on.
And you know, it is a real worry. I mean, without any shadow of a doubt, the drug problem in the UK, as it is in other countries of the world, has reached epidemic proportions. And it is a big worry. I'm a parent, and I know Stefan is, and probably a lot of the people who are watching this now or the recording after will be parents, and it is a great concern to residents. So it's pleasing to hear that it is such a priority.
It is a big issue, but the other one that's that's even far more harmful to all of us is just straight alcohol. Beer and wine taken in the numbers that are, we end up with all kinds of domestic incidents escalating, children taken into care, abused, people dying, people being stabbed. That's mainly alcohol related, never mind the health issues that later creates and drains on the health service. So there's a whole issue here about educating all of ourselves about what we put inside our bodies.
Yeah. And of course, the resource that goes into somebody who goes out on a Saturday night in Camberley Town Centre, drinks too much, decides he wants to fight the world. How many police officers does it take to restrain him? Who's injured in the process? So there are ambulances then, involved. Then there's the hospital staff at Frimley Park Hospital to deal with all the people that are injured, and then the custody people, to take care of it, and the courts. I mean, it must cost an absolute fortune.
Of course, say nothing of the shop windows damaged, businesses that can't function. The sense of really fear it creates for other people witnessing. The costs of that kind of stuff is really, really significant, which is why trying to regulate licensing and managing it appropriately, as well as education, is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for that. That's great. Next question is from Barbara Lathorne in Mitchett. Her comments and question is: Amnesty International voted recently for the full decriminalisation of all aspects of sex work. Whilst I fully support the decriminalisation of prostitution, these people are some of the most vulnerable in society, and they must be able to access the police without fear of prosecution. I cannot support the decriminalisation of pimping and those who benefit from the sale of women for sex, which is what Amnesty International are promoting. What's your view on this?
Well, I'd pretty much go along with much of that. I was only the other day talking to a social worker who tries to engage in dealing with trafficked women, because there are lots of them all over the country, and they'll be in this county, trafficked by organised criminals, whether from abroad or in the UK, exploiting people into prostitution has been something that's gone on for hundreds of years. Wicked people do that. If we look at that wonderful musical Les Miserables, that's exactly what happens to one of the principal characters, and that's based over 200 years ago. So share all of that. But it's shocking what goes on. I came across a case the other day of a social worker who was engaging with some Eastern European women up in central London, got them to talk to them. One of the women was about to start to seek help. She disappeared, and when they saw her again, she'd had one of her fingers cut off. Undoubtedly, this is shocking stuff, by one of the criminals to remind her and the other girls what happens to them if they dare to talk. It's dreadful. It's horrible. It's yet another reason why the cuts in our resources are such a problem. And going back to the issue we started off with, you know, with the unfortunate PCSO doesn't work for Surrey anymore. You know, we've got to deal with people being maimed in front of our faces and balance that against neighbourhood policing.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Now we've got the next question is from Bob Jenkin via Facebook. Would the PCC recommend the police as a career to a young person today? They can expect to work 40 years in an arduous job with less chance of promotion due to direct entry schemes for senior officers, and expect less protection if they are injured or fall ill than had previously been the case. Good question.
Considering I did it for 30 years and my own son and nephews are in and my brothers were, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
The conditions when I joined in 1979 in terms of pay, conditions, the support you got from government, the whole system of operation were very different. I absolutely loved my time I was in it. I miss it still. You have a real opportunity to make a difference, to confront and deal with bad people and frankly put them in prison if the evidence is there. You help people, but it is extremely stressful. It's extremely difficult. It's very, very challenging. I've been faced with the unfortunate situation of my own deputy, who himself is a former police officer, had two sons in the police. One of them has just resigned from the police service. He's a sergeant, qualified for inspector, 2 degrees, a master's degree in criminology, and he's chosen to go elsewhere. For me personally, knowing what I knew then when I joined and what I know now, and I absolutely loved it, it's a very important job, I don't think I would make the decision to leave the career I was in then to join the police service now. Right.
Do you want to elaborate on that a bit more?
I think, you know, what I'm saying is when 1979, the pay, I was a professionally trained civil engineer with a degree in engineering. I'd worked for 3 years in engineering. I'd always wanted to be a police officer. The pay and conditions were very attractive, as were the conditions of service. They are far from that now. We've got real issues in recruitment and retention in Surrey. We're dealing with them, but we're doing something that's ultimately not going to be good for us, but we've got no choice. We recently advertised for seeking to get over 120 people to join. We got 32 people coming through just to fill the numbers up. We've now trawled out to other forces where they've got people on waiting lists, and we've now got people from Sussex waiting list to join. But I know absolutely that once they've joined and we've paid the money to train them, as soon as there are vacancies back in Sussex or elsewhere, they're going to transfer back to where the housing is cheaper. And we are then going to be left with a gap on the money we spent in training and still another gap. Policing is now beyond a tipping point in a spiral of decline. The service that's now delivered will continue to drop off. And we heard at the very beginning the despair, really, of that police community support officer who left, and probably the person who's asked this question is an ex-police officer. I'm on record as saying it is going to get much worse in what it's able to deliver, and we shouldn't be surprised when we see more and more things appearing that cause real concern, nor should we be surprised when we see more and more cases of police being able to deal with migrants, respond to shop windows being smashed, and so on, as we've heard. You know, the bucket is empty. There are people leaking out of it at the moment. Policing is already beyond a tipping point, and I am very unhappy as the politician elected by the people to tell you that, but that's a fact. I'm not going to leave. I'm going to run for you again, and I'm going to continue to make my voice heard, because I'm a Surrey resident and I do not like seeing what's happening to the police, the prison service and the Crown Prosecution Service. It's a shadow of what is required to keep us safe.
Yeah. Personally, I think that, you know, it's good that we have a former police officer in the role. I think it's quite useful background knowledge for your job. And somebody actually asks the question, You are an ex-policeman. Steve, actually, who asked the question. You're an ex-policeman. Does that help you? Does that help or hinder you in your work for Surrey Police?
It is a tremendous help, but also I find it challenging sometimes. The reason why it's a tremendous help is I absolutely understand the pressures, the problems, the risks that police have to manage, which means that I don't need to keep worrying the chief constable about why they're doing whatever they're doing operationally. So I understand the issues and understand the complexities, and I know I can read a police balance sheet where the money's being spent, and I can put an interpretation on it. Sometimes, because I'm an ex-senior police officer, it frustrates me because I almost want to roll my sleeves up and jump in and help out, but I can't. I'm a politician. But what it does mean is because I know how working more closely with councils and neighbourhood watch and so on, we can be yet more effective because of my former policing experience. I therefore move my activities really out to work more with the councils and other partnership groups to deliver for the public and victims. So it's a real help. Interestingly enough, when the Policy Exchange polled the public on what they wanted for a police crime commissioner in terms of their previous life or career, 59% of the public said they wanted an ex-police officer. So presumably that's what the Surrey Police wanted. We'll have to see if they want it next time.
Okay, fair enough. Now, there's a question in the comments here of this blab from Donald Brandt. And I think it's actually a really good question and quite apt, actually, because I think that we touched on this in the last one of these that we did. Can you see analytic proof of deterrence of crime based on the number of police officers on the street? Great question.
There is some evidence of it that's been done over the years where the trials have been conducted. For example, in one particular area, they'll put more police officers in one quadrant of an area in cars or on foot, and in others none, and there will be a change in those levels. I also know absolutely from my own policing experience that when we apply certain tactics like lots of extra officers on the ground, there are reductions. The classic is I used to oversee Metropolitan Police policy to reduce the number of youth murders with knives in London. It was called Operation Blunt. And the way we would do that is we would get an extra 50 or 60 officers to supplement a shift that would normally only be 15 strong and put them out on the street, stopping and searching potential suspects. And as a result, knife crime in London dropped by about 70%. That tactic's now been stopped, and of course knife crime is now going massively up through the roof. So there is clear evidence that if you've got police officers on the street in numbers visibly, either in vehicles or on foot, or if you're countering certain types of crime, out in plain clothes but making their presence felt to the known ne'er-do-wells, that crime will drop. But to try and resource at that level in Surrey would be impossible. We would need to quadruple the number of officers we've got to have the kind of effect that I think we're talking about here. You know, we are simply not going to put our budget up from 200 million a year to 800 to $1 billion a year. It ain't going to happen. Therefore, you know, police need to put their officers into as best they can to wherever they need to be. But the fact is, the demands are such that the ability for the chief to proactively target visible police into areas of high crime doesn't really exist anymore because we haven't got the officers available to do that.
Right. Okay. Now we're pretty much running out of time. So if we've not asked all the questions that people have put, I'm ever so sorry about that, but I wanted to try and keep this to about an hour, and I think you've done a good job of doing that, Kevin, so well done. Is there anything before we wrap this up? And by the way, when I go off air, people will still be able to see you. So if anybody does have any questions or they want to jump in quickly when we go off air and ask you face-to-face a question, that's absolutely fine. Okay. But while we're on the record, is there anything you wanted to sum up with?
No, just to say I'm grateful for the people who've put in all the different questions, you know, no matter how challenging or whatever they are, because it's only when the public really engage and understand on public safety that we can get the partnership we need to move forward, because the fact of the matter is, with resources being reduced for councils, mental health, police and prisons and so on, we've all got to do our bit. And I would invite anyone who's concerned to find a way of perhaps volunteering a bit of time to actually do something to make it better. It's easy for us all to moan and complain, but if I can just say, please think about, do you want to get involved in mentoring a young person who's going off the rails? Do you want to become a police volunteer, a special constable, or do some kind of work on the edges of that? We can all help to make the place better. We can't all just sit there and point fingers and say, he should do it better, or the police or the councils are failing. If we want the place better, we all need to do our own bit as well. So I'll stay on for a couple of minutes, see if anyone else pops up. And if not, I look forward to seeing you in a month or two, Paul.
Yeah, we're going to do this again because the thing is the elections are coming up. Is it next May or March?
We've got about 10 months, so there's plenty of time to do a few more of these.
Right, so we could do one or two more before then, but we've got to be careful because of rules on PERDA and all that sort of stuff.
They don't come until April. Yeah. The PERDA rules don't come until March, April next year. So you can, I mean, if you want to do a regular monthly on this, I'm happy to do that, because I think it's important public can tell me what they want me to hear, and I can answer their questions.
Yeah, and actually we've had 53 people watching this live, which is astonishing, really, when you consider we changed the platform at the last minute. Now, I'm going to go off air, but then there is somebody who wants to come in and ask you a question. So let me just go off the record. So for those people watching the recording of this afterwards and those people watching live now, thank you so much for joining us, Kevin.
My pleasure.
Like I say, we're going to do this again. I think there's a lot of value in this so that people can see what it is that
I think we should, if you can get the time together, I'd like to do this kind of monthly or something, because it's a great way for people to ask their questions, a great way to inform. You may not have the time available, but this is the kind of thing that I think all democratically elected people should do with their electorate. So I'm thankful to you that you're organising it. More power to you. Well done, you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we will. We'll do it a lot more. We'll talk about that afterwards. So, Kevin Hurley, thank you very much.